Can I share this table? 5 words that changed 3 lives forever. A one-legged girl walks into a crowded cafe, desperate to feel close to the family she lost in a tragedy that took everything. A single father and his 6-year-old daughter sit at a corner table, unaware they're about to meet someone who will shatter and rebuild their world. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We'd love seeing how far our stories travel. The corner bean was packed that Saturday morning in late March. Portland's first real sunshine after months of gray winter had drawn everyone out. Couples on dates, students with laptops, families with strollers. Every table was full, every seat taken. Timothy Smith glanced up from his black coffee and caught sight of her. A young woman on crutches was navigating through the crowded cafe, blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail, brown eyes scanning desperately for an empty seat. She moved with practiced efficiency despite the crutches. But what struck Timothy most was the expression on her face, determination mixed with something that looked like barely contained desperation.
And then John's hamster escaped during show and tell and ran under Mrs. Faith's desk, and she screamed so loud. 6-year-old Starla was in the middle of an animated story, her hands gesturing wildly. Timothy smiled at his daughter, but kept watching the woman. She approached a table near the door where a couple sat close together, clearly on a date. He saw her speak to them, saw the woman shake her head firmly. The young woman on crutches nodded, apologized, and moved to another table where a man sat alone, papers and laptops spread everywhere. Again, she was refused. Timothy watched her shoulders slump, watched the way she bit her lip as if fighting back tears. "Daddy, are you even listening?" Starla's voice pulled him back. "Of course, sweetie, the hamster escaped. That was like 5 minutes ago. Now I'm telling you about—" But Timothy's attention had drifted again. The woman on crutches was standing in the middle of the cafe now, looking around with an expression that broke his heart. Lost, alone, like she was about to give up on something important. For a brief moment, their gazes met across the crowded cafe. Timothy saw vulnerability there, hope, and a deep sadness that seemed to radiate from her very core. She took a breath, adjusted her crutches, and started walking towards them. "Excuse me," she said softly when she reached their corner table by the window. Her voice was steady, but Timothy could hear the emotion trembling underneath. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I know this is probably strange, but would you mind if I shared this table with you? The cafe is completely full, and I—" She paused, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I really need to be here today. It's very important to me." Timothy stood immediately, pulling out the empty chair across from them. "Of course. Please, sit. I'm Timothy, and this is my daughter Starla." Relief washed over the young woman's face like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. She carefully settled into the chair and propped her crutches against the wall beside her. Thank you so much. I'm Moon." She looked at them both, and Timothy saw her eyes were wet with tears that hadn't quite fallen. "I asked those other tables first, but they said they needed privacy. I was starting to think I'd have to leave, and Her voice caught in her throat. "I really couldn't bear to leave without being here for a while." "We are happy to share our table," Timothy said warmly. "This place gets crazy when the weather's nice." Starla, never one to be shy, leaned forward with bright curiosity. "We come here every single Saturday. It's our special tradition. I always get hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, and Daddy gets boring black coffee." She wrinkled her nose at Timothy's mug. "Do you like hot chocolate?" Moon smiled, and despite the sadness that clung to her, the smile reached her eyes. "I love hot chocolate. That sounds perfect for today."
A server appeared, and Moon ordered coffee and a croissant. As the server left, Starla launched into conversation with the enthusiasm only a 6-year-old could muster. "I'm in 1st grade, and my teacher is Mrs. Faith, and she has a hamster in our classroom named Cheeto because he's orange and fluffy. Do you have any pets?" "I don't right now," Moon said, her fingers wrapped around her coffee cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "But I used to have a cat named Luna. She was gray with white paws. That's such a pretty name. Luna means moon in Spanish. My friend Maya taught me that. Her family speaks Spanish. Moon's smile widened. It does. That's exactly why I named her that. Timothy found himself relaxing as they talked. There was something about Moon. Despite the sadness she carried, she listened to Starla with genuine interest. She asked follow-up questions about school, about Cheeto the hamster, about Starla's best friend when she mentioned it. She laughed at the funny parts, gasped at the dramatic moments. They'd been sitting together for about 15 minutes when Moon carefully set down her coffee cup. She looked at both of them with an expression Timothy couldn't quite decipher. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, more painful. I want to tell you both something. The reason I needed to be here today specifically, it's because today is my birthday. I'm 23 today. Starla's eyes went wide with pure delight. It's your birthday?
And without a moment's hesitation, without asking permission or feeling any self-consciousness, Starla burst into song. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Moon, happy birthday to you. Timothy immediately joined in, his deeper voice blending with his daughter's enthusiastic, slightly off-key soprano. Several nearby patrons glanced over. A woman at the next table smiled and joined in for the final line. An older couple across the cafe added their voices too. When the song ended, Moon had tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling through them, and Timothy saw something shift in her expression, a crack in whatever armor she'd been wearing. That was... She wiped at her eyes with trembling fingers. That was the most beautiful thing anyone's done for me in a very long time. Thank you, both of you. Everyone needs birthday songs, Starla declared with absolute conviction. Then her face lit up with another idea. Daddy, we need to get her a birthday cake. You can't have a birthday without cake. Oh no, please, Moon started to protest, shaking her head. Timothy glanced toward the display case near the counter where the cafe kept their fresh pastries and small cakes. They actually make really good cakes here. Would that be okay? It's your birthday. You should definitely have cake. You've both been so incredibly kind already, Moon said with her voice thick with emotion. I don't want to be any trouble. You're not trouble at all, Timothy said gently. Really, please let us celebrate with you. Despite Moon's continued protests, Timothy excused himself and went to the counter. He returned a few minutes later carrying a small chocolate cake with vanilla buttercream frosting and a single candle. When he lit the candle, several people at nearby tables noticed. Someone started singing again, and soon their entire corner of the cafe had joined in. Moon closed her eyes, and Timothy saw her lips move, making a wish. She blew out the candle. A small ripple of applause spread through the space. Okay, birthday girl gets the first piece, and the biggest piece, Starla announced, taking charge of the cake distribution with serious authority. As they shared the cake, something shifted in the atmosphere. The sweetness of the moment, the unexpected kindness from strangers, seemed to crack open something in Moon that had been locked tight. This cafe, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, staring down at her plate. This was my family's place. Our Saturday morning tradition, exactly like yours. Timothy felt his chest tighten. He glanced at Starla, who had stopped eating her cake, her intuitive child sense picking up on the weight of what was coming. Moon looked up, meeting Timothy's eyes. Me, my little sister Kennedy, and our parents. We live just a few blocks from here, in a small apartment above a bookstore. My dad was a firefighter at Station 14, and my mom was a pediatric nurse at Dornbecker Children's Hospital. She paused, and Timothy saw her hands begin to tremble around her fork. We never had much money, but Saturday mornings here at the Corner Bean, these were the happiest times of my entire life. Kennedy would always order strawberry waffles with extra syrup. My dad made these terrible jokes that made my mom groan but made us laugh. My mom would steal bites of everyone's food. We'd sit at a table just like this one, and for those few hours, nothing else mattered. Timothy reached across the table instinctively, placing his hand gently over hers. "What happened, Moon?" She closed her eyes, and a tear slipped down her cheek. 2 years ago, there was a gas leak in our apartment building. The landlord had been warned multiple times about the old, corroded pipes. He always said he'd get to it next month, next month, next month. We were all asleep when it happened. Her voice broke, fracturing into pieces. The explosion... I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. The entire building had collapsed. I was trapped under concrete and steel beams for almost 6 hours before the rescue team could reach me. My left leg was completely crushed. The doctor said there was no way to save it. They had to amputate it. Starla's eyes were wide, shimmering with tears. Timothy tightened his grip on Moon's hand. My parents and Kennedy... Moon's voice shattered completely. They didn't make it out. They died in the collapse. Kennedy was only 14 years old. She wanted to be a veterinarian because she loved every single animal she ever met. She used to bring home stray cats, nurse injured birds back to health, cry over roadkill. She had the biggest heart. The tears were streaming down Moon's face now, and Timothy felt his own eyes burning. And my parents, they spent their entire adult lives saving other people. My dad ran into burning buildings. My mom fought to save sick children every day. But they couldn't save themselves. They couldn't save Kennedy. They couldn't save me.
Before Timothy could respond, Starla slipped silently out of her chair and walked around the table. Without saying a word, she wrapped her small arms around Moon and hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry your family died," Starla said softly, her voice carrying that pure, unfiltered empathy that only children seem capable of. "That's the saddest thing I ever heard. But you're not alone right now. We're here with you." Moon pulled Starla closer and sobbed into her hair. Timothy came around too, placing a comforting hand on Moon's shoulder. They stayed like that for what felt like a long time. 3 people who'd been strangers less than an hour ago, now connected by unexpected kindness and shared understanding of loss. When Moon finally composed herself, she looked at them both with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart like that." "You don't need to apologize. Not for grief. Not ever," Timothy said firmly. Moon wiped her face with a napkin, taking a shaky breath. "I live with my aunt now, up in Vancouver, Washington. She took me in after I got out of rehab for my leg. But it doesn't feel like home. Nothing feels like home anymore." She looked around the cafe, her gaze landing on different tables, different corners. "Today's my birthday. And all I wanted was to come back here, to this cafe, to feel close to them again. This was where we were happiest. I thought if I could just sit here at one of these tables, maybe I could feel like they weren't completely gone. But when I got here and saw how crowded it was, I almost left." She looked at Timothy, and fresh tears welled in her eyes.
"And then you said yes. You let me sit here. You sang to me. You got me cake. You made me feel like I mattered on a day when I felt completely alone in the world." "You do matter," Starla said with absolute certainty, still standing beside Moon's chair. "And you're not alone. You have us now." Timothy smiled at his daughter's pure heart. He thought about how they'd been coming to this cafe for 3 years, ever since his divorce with Lumen was finalized. How Saturday mornings had become their sacred time, their moment of peace and the chaos of single parenthood. "She's right," Timothy said. "You don't have to be alone today. We were planning to go to the park this afternoon. Nothing fancy, just our usual Saturday. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. Moon looked surprised. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your time together. You're not intruding, Timothy said. We'd like you to come. Really? Moon hesitated for only a moment before nodding. I would really love that. Thank you. They spent the rest of that afternoon at Laurelhurst Park. Starla played on the swings, while Timothy and Moon sat on a bench, talking in the way people do when they sense a connection that feels both surprising and inevitable. How long have you been doing the Saturday morning tradition? Moon asked, watching Starla pump her legs higher on the swing set. 3 years now, Timothy said, and for the first time, he opened up about his own story. Since my divorce was finalized, Starla was 3 when her mom and I split up. I'm sorry, Moon said softly. That must have been hard.
Timothy nodded, surprised at how easy it felt to talk to her. It was, but it was also necessary. Lumen and I, that's Starla's mom, we married young, 22, right out of college. We thought we wanted the same things, but we didn't. She's an artist, a free spirit. She wanted spontaneity, adventure, last-minute road trips. I'm more of a homebody. I like routines, quiet mornings, stability. He paused, watching Starla jump off the swing and run toward the monkey bars. When Starla was born, we both tried so hard to make it work. But trying to be someone you're not, it's exhausting. We weren't angry at each other, we just fell out of love, gradually. Like colors fading in the sun. That sounds harder than anger, Moon observed. It was, Timothy admitted, because there was no one to blame. No betrayal, no dramatic fight, just the sad realization that loving someone isn't always enough if you want fundamentally different lives. Moon was quiet for a moment. Where is she now? Seattle. She's a curator at a gallery up there. She visits twice a month and calls Starla regularly. The divorce was amicable. We did mediation instead of lawyers. I got primary custody because my teaching job is more stable, and Starla needed that consistency. You're a teacher, Timothy smiled. Middle school art. It's chaos and creativity and hormones all mixed together, but I love it. Art teacher, Moon said, something lighting up in her eyes. That's perfect. You have that energy. Patient, observant, creative. And what about you? Timothy asked. You mentioned graphic design? Moon nodded. Freelance. I work from home, which has been good since the amputation. I had to completely relearn my workflow. I used to pace around my apartment while brainstorming, sketch standing up at an easel. Now, I do most of my work sitting, using a tablet. It took months to adapt, but I got there. That's incredibly resilient. I didn't have much choice, Moon said quietly. It was adapt or give up, and I had already lost everything else. I wasn't going to lose my career, too. They discovered more shared interests as the afternoon wore on. They both loved hiking, though Moon hadn't been on a trail since the accident. They both preferred indie films to blockbusters. They both thought the smell of Portland after rain was the best smell in the world. They both loved bookstores with creaky floors and coffee shops with mismatched furniture. When evening came and they finally parted ways in the parking lot, they exchanged phone numbers. Thank you for today, Moon said, her eyes still a bit puffy, but genuinely happy for the first time. You and Starla turned what I thought would be the loneliest, most painful birthday of my life into something beautiful. I'll never forget this. Same place next Saturday? Timothy asked, surprising himself with how much he hoped she'd say yes. Moon's face lit up. I would absolutely love that. The texts started that night. Moon, thank you again for today. I can't stop thinking about how kind you both were to a complete stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, Timothy said. You're our friend. And friends don't thank friends for birthday cake. It's in the Friendship Handbook. Page 47.
I'll have to read that handbook more carefully. Timothy, it's a thrilling read, right up there with assembly instructions and tax forms. The following Saturday, Moon showed up at the corner bean wearing a nervous smile, but the moment Starla saw her, she squealed with delight and ran over for a hug. And just like that, it felt like Moon had always been part of their Saturday tradition. The weeks turned into months. Moon started joining them for other things too. trips to Powell, City of Books, where they'd get lost in different sections and text each other ridiculous book titles they found. Movie nights at Timothy's apartment after Starla went to bed, where they'd argue good-naturedly about plot holes and character motivations. Starla's school art show, where Moon stood next to Timothy and took photos like a proud aunt. Moon taught Starla how to draw cartoon characters, sitting at Timothy's kitchen table with colored pencils spread everywhere. Timothy and Moon would text late into the night about everything and nothing. Funny memes, random observations about their days, deep conversations about grief and hope and rebuilding. 2 months after they met, Moon made a decision. "I'm moving to Portland," she told Timothy one evening. They were sitting on his couch after Starla had gone to bed, watching a documentary neither of them was really paying attention to. Timothy's heart did a little flip. "Really? My aunt is supportive. She knows I need to rebuild my life, and living away from the one place that feels like home, it doesn't make sense. I've been looking at apartments in the neighborhood. There's a studio available 3 blocks from here." "That's amazing," Timothy said, trying to keep his voice casual even though his heart was racing. "I can help you move." "You don't have to." "I want to." When moving day came, Timothy recruited a few of his teacher friends. They carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, assembled furniture, hung pictures. Moon ordered pizza for everyone, and by the end of the day, her studio apartment felt like home.
3 months into their friendship, Moon was fully integrated into their lives. She knew that Starla hated broccoli but loved Brussels sprouts. She knew that Timothy graded papers better with instrumental jazz playing in the background. She knew their coffee orders by heart. She'd become the person Timothy texted first when something funny happened, the person whose opinion he valued, the person whose laugh made his entire day better. And one afternoon in June, sitting in a coffee shop, not the Corner Bean, somewhere new, Timothy realized his feelings had shifted from platonic to something deeper. Moon was laughing at something ridiculous that had happened at her graphic design client meeting, her head thrown back, the afternoon light catching her hair just right, and Timothy's heart did a little flip. He was falling in love with her. Maybe he had been for a while. But he didn't say anything. Moon had been through so much trauma. She was 9 years younger than him. He had a daughter to think about. What if he misread the signals and scared her away? What if pursuing something romantic ruined the friendship they'd built? So he kept quiet, treasuring what they had while silently wishing for more. 4 months into their friendship, everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening in early August. Timothy was grading student artwork at his kitchen table while Starla colored nearby. His phone rang. Lumen's name on the screen. "Hey, Lumen, is everything okay?" "Yes, actually, I'm calling with good news." She sounded excited, energized in a way he hadn't heard in years. "I got a job offer at the Portland Art Museum, a curatorial position with the path to senior curator within 2 years. It's exactly what I've been working toward, Timothy, and it means I'd be moving back to Portland." Timothy's hand tightened on the phone. "You're moving back here?" "I'm planning to, yes. I've been thinking about it for a while now, even before this job came up. I've regretted not being more present in Starla's life. Seeing her twice a month isn't enough. I want to be a real mom to her, not just a visitor. This job is the perfect opportunity." That's great, Lumen. Starla would love to see you more often. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about," Lumen said, her voice softening. "I've been doing a lot of therapy, a lot of self-reflection. I've been thinking about us, about our marriage." Timothy's stomach dropped. "Lumen, hear me out," she said quickly. "We were so young when we got married. We let stress and our differences pull us apart. But maybe we gave up too quickly. Maybe, with some time and growth and maturity, we could try again. Not immediately, but eventually. Think about it, Timothy. A real family for Starla. Both her parents together, giving her the stability and love she deserves." Timothy felt like he couldn't breathe. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now. I know it's a lot. Just think about it. For Starla's sake, if nothing else." After they hung up, Timothy sat frozen at the table, his mind spinning in circles. Starla looked up from her coloring. "Was that Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Is she coming to visit soon?" Timothy took a breath. "Actually, Mommy might be moving back to Portland for a new job. Starla's face exploded with joy. Really? Mommy's coming back here? That's the best news ever! She bounced in her seat, her coloring forgotten. Oh, Daddy, this is so great. I can see her all the time, and maybe if she's here, you and Mommy could be together again, like a real family, like Harper's parents. We could all live together. Timothy's heart sank. Sweetie, it's not that simple. But it could be, Starla insisted with childhood optimism. If Mommy's here and you're here, you could fall back in love. That happens in movies all the time, and then we'd be a real family, and I wouldn't have to go back and forth, and we could have dinner together every night. Sometimes the people we love want things we can't give them. Have you ever been in that impossible position? That Saturday, at the Corner Bean, Moon immediately sensed something was off. Timothy was distracted, quieter than usual, barely touching his coffee. Hey, she said gently, after Starla skipped off to look at the pastry display. What's going on? You seem a million miles away. Timothy sighed, rubbing his face. Lumen called. She got a job offer in Portland. She's moving back. Oh! Moon's expression shifted subtly. Something Timothy couldn't quite read flickered across her face. That's good, though, right? Starla will get to see her more. Yeah, it'll be good for Starla. Is there something else? Moon asked carefully. Timothy hesitated. How could he tell her that Lumen wanted to try again, that his ex-wife had suggested rekindling their marriage, that he was confused about what any of it meant? Just a lot of changes coming, a lot to figure out.
What Timothy didn't know was that later that afternoon, when he'd stepped away to take a phone call from his sister, Starla had told Moon everything, with a child's complete lack of filter. "Guess what, Miss Moon?" Starla had said, practically vibrating with excitement. "My mommy is moving back to Portland, and I told Daddy that maybe they could fall back in love and we could all be a family together. Isn't that the best idea ever? Then I'd have both my parents in the same house." Moon had felt something crack inside her chest. That would be really wonderful for you, Starla," she'd managed to say through a smile that felt frozen on her face. "I really hope it happens," Starla had continued, completely oblivious to Moon's pain. "I pray about it every night. I want my mommy and daddy together again." That night, Moon lay awake in her studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, as the Portland rain drummed against her window. Of course Timothy would want his family back together. Of course he'd choose to give Starla what she so desperately wanted, both her parents, a complete family unit. What could Moon possibly offer that would compare to that? She was just some broken girl who'd stumbled into their lives at a cafe. She had no right to stand in the way of Starla getting her intact family. And Timothy? He'd never indicated he saw her as anything more than a friend. She'd been foolish to let herself fall in love with him. Foolish to imagine he might feel the same way. Over the next 2 weeks, Moon slowly began pulling away. Timothy's tried to stay optimistic, but it was becoming harder and harder. He missed his morning coffees with Moon and the spark she brought to their evenings. "Want to come over for movie night Friday?" "I can't, sorry. Swamped with a big freelance deadline." "Saturday coffee?" "Not feeling great. Rain check?" "Next Saturday. I have to drive to Vancouver to help my aunt with something." Timothy was confused and hurt. Had he done something wrong? Said something to upset her? The shift had happened right after he'd mentioned Lumen moving back. He tried calling, but Moon let it go to voicemail. "Did I do something? Please talk to me. I miss you." Moon's response came hours later. "I just think I've been imposing too much on your time with Starla. You two need your space, especially with everything changing." Timothy stared at the message, completely baffled. Imposing? She was part of their family now. How could she think she was imposing? On their third Saturday without Moon, Starla looked around the corner beam with confused, sad eyes. "Where's Miss Moon? Why doesn't she come anymore? Did we do something to make her mad?" "No, sweetie, she's just busy."
But she was never too busy before, Starla said, her voice small and wounded. I miss her, Daddy. She's my friend. I miss her too, Timothy admitted. That evening, after putting Starla to bed, Timothy sat on his couch trying to make sense of everything. Moon's withdrawal had started right after he'd mentioned Lumen, and Starla had been so excited about her parents potentially getting back together. Unless... The realization hit him like a freight train. Starla must have told Moon about wanting her parents back together, and Moon, sweet Moon who'd lost her entire family, probably thought she was standing in the way of Starla getting hers back. She was sacrificing her own happiness and their friendship because she thought it was the right thing to do for Starla. Timothy grabbed his keys. 20 minutes later, he was knocking on Moon's apartment door. When she opened it, surprise and something like panic flashed across her face. Timothy, what are you doing here? Is Starla okay? Starla's fine. She's with my neighbor. We need to talk, please. Moon hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. Her studio apartment was small but cozy, decorated with photos of her late family on every surface. They sat on her second-hand couch, and Timothy turned to face her directly. You're pulling away because of Lumen, aren't you? Moon's eyes immediately filled with tears. Timothy, Starla told you, didn't she, about wanting Lumen and me to get back together? Moon looked down at her hands, twisting them in her lap. She's excited about having both her parents in the same city, and she should be excited. She deserves to have a complete family, Timothy. Both her parents loving each other, all living together. After everything she's been through with the divorce, she deserves that fairy tale ending. Moon, look at me, please. She met his eyes, and he saw tears spilling down her cheeks. I need you to understand something, Timothy said firmly, reaching for her hands. Lumen and I are not getting back together. We're not in love. We haven't been for years. Moving to the same city doesn't change that fundamental truth. But she wants to try again. She mentioned it as a possibility, Timothy corrected, and I haven't seriously considered it for even a second. Lumen and I don't belong together. We never really did. We were young and in love with the idea of love, but we weren't compatible as life partners. That hasn't changed. But Starla wants... Starla is 6 years old, Timothy said gently but firmly. She has fantasies about fairy tale endings where everyone lives happily ever after in the same house. But that's not reality, and that's not what's best for her. Lumen and I can both be excellent parents to Starla without being married to each other. Starla will understand that as she gets older. Timothy, I'm not finished, he said, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it. I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. These past 4 months have been some of the happiest months of my life since my divorce, not because of convenience or circumstance, but because of you. Moon's breath caught. Because you make me laugh in ways I forgot I could. Because you see the world through this lens that fascinates me. Because you're kind and resilient and real and beautiful. Because when I'm with you, everything feels right in a way it never ever felt with Lumen. Tears were streaming down Moon's face now. You can't say things like that. Why not? It's the truth. Timothy took both her hands in his, holding them tightly. You're not standing in the way of anything, Moon. You're not an obstacle to my family. You are my family. You have been since that day you asked to share our table. Starla loves you. He took a shaky breath. I love you. I'm in love with you. I have been for weeks, maybe months, and I hope you might feel the same way. Moon stared at him, tears streaming down her face, her breath coming in shaky gasps. I do. I've been falling in love with you since you sang happy birthday to a stranger and made her feel seen. But I couldn't. I thought I was being selfish. I couldn't let myself hope that you... Timothy pulled her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest, months of suppressed feelings pouring out. He held her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist. You're allowed to hope, he murmured into her hair. "You're allowed to want things. You're allowed to be loved, Moon. You're allowed to be happy." "I love you," Moon said, pulling back to look at him through her tears. "I love you so much, and I love Starla, but I'm so scared." "Of what?" "Of messing this up. Of you realizing I'm not enough. Of Starla resenting me for not being her mother. Of—" Timothy kissed her. It was soft and gentle and full of months of unspoken longing, full of all the words he'd been too afraid to say. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "You are enough," he said firmly, his hands cupping her face. "You are more than enough, and we'll figure everything out together. Lumen moving back, the new co-parenting arrangement, all of it. But please don't pull away from us. Don't leave us. We need you." "I won't leave," Moon promised, her hands clutching his shirt like a lifeline. "I'm sorry I tried to. I'm so sorry." "You don't have to apologize," Timothy said, kissing her forehead. "You being in our lives is what's right." They held each other for a long time, the Portland rain continuing its steady rhythm against the window, washing away fear and doubt and leaving only the truth between them. The next morning, Timothy sat Starla down for an important conversation at their kitchen table. "Sweetie, I need to talk to you about Mommy moving back to Portland." Starla looked up at him with hopeful eyes, a piece of toast halfway to her mouth.
Mommy and Daddy both love you more than anything in the world, and Mommy wants to move here so she can see you much more often, which is wonderful. But, he took a breath, Mommy and Daddy are not getting back together. Starla's face fell, the toast forgotten. But why? If she's here... Because sometimes people who care about each other realize they're better as friends than as married people. Mommy and I tried really hard when we were married, but we just weren't happy together the way married people should be. We made each other sad more than we made each other happy. But I want us all to be together, Starla said, her voice quavering, tears welling in her eyes. I know, sweetheart, and I understand why you want that. But we are together, just in a different way. You have Mommy who loves you, and you have Daddy who loves you. We're both here for you. That's what matters. Not whether we live in the same house or are married to each other. Starla was quiet for a moment, processing. Is it because of Miss Moon? No, Timothy said firmly, taking her small hands in his. Mommy and I made our choice to divorce long before I ever met Miss Moon. But I do need to tell you something about Miss Moon. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I love her, Starla. Not just as a friend, but the way grown-ups love each other when they want to be together. To his surprise, Starla's expression softened. Like boyfriend and girlfriend? Yes, exactly like that. Starla was quiet for another moment, her 6-year-old mind working through complex emotions. Then she said, I like Miss Moon. She's really nice, and you smile a lot when she's around. You laugh more. Timothy felt tears prick his eyes. I do smile more when she's around. Can she still come to Saturday coffee with us? Always, sweetheart, always. Starla nodded slowly, then climbed into Timothy's lap and hugged him. I still wish you and Mommy could be together, she said honestly, her small voice muffled against his chest. But I guess if you're happy with Miss Moon, that's okay too. Thank you for understanding, baby girl.
When Lumen moved back to Portland 6 weeks later, she and Timothy worked out a new custody arrangement over coffee at a neutral cafe. Starla would stay with Lumen every other weekend and one weeknight for dinner. It took some adjustment, but it worked. The first time Lumen came to pick up Starla from Timothy's apartment, she met Moon. After Starla ran excitedly to pack her overnight bag, the two women stood somewhat awkwardly in the doorway. Lumen was exactly as Moon had pictured, tall, artistic, with paint-stained fingers and expressive eyes. So, you're Moon, Lumen said. and her expression was hard to read. "I am," Moon said quietly, her heart racing. "I want you to know I'm not trying to replace you. Your starless mother. I would never—" She knew what I was saying. "I know," Lumen interrupted, and to Moon's surprise, she smiled. It was genuine, reaching her eyes. "Starla talks about you constantly. Miss Moon taught me this, Miss Moon said that. I can tell she loves you, and I can see that you make Timothy happy in ways I never could." She paused, glancing back toward Timothy, who was in Starla's room helping her pack. "I thought I wanted to try again with him, but the truth is, I was lonely, and I confused wanting to be a better mom with wanting to be his wife again. Those are two different things." She looked back at Moon. "I'm actually glad he found you. Take care of them. They're both pretty special." Moon felt tears spring to her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Take good care of my girl," Lumen said, her voice soft. "Not just Timothy, Starla too." "I will. I absolutely will." Over time, Lumen and Moon developed a respectful co-parenting relationship built on their shared love for Starla. There were awkward moments and adjustments, school events, holidays, but they navigated them with grace and maturity, always putting Starla first. 8 months after that first meeting at the Corner Bean, on a Saturday morning at their usual table, Timothy got down on one knee. Starla stood beside him, wearing her best dress and holding a small velvet box, practically vibrating with barely contained excitement. The cafe had quieted, other patrons noticing what was happening. "Moon Walsh," Timothy said, taking her hand while she stared at him in shock. "That day you asked to share our table, you changed our lives completely. You brought light and love and laughter back into our world. You showed me what real partnership looks like. You've been patient with Starla's adjustment. You've been gracious with Lumen. You've been everything I didn't know I needed." His voice wavered with emotion. "Will you marry us? Will you officially become part of our family?" Moon was crying and laughing at the same time, her hand covering her mouth. "Yes! Yes, absolutely yes!" Starla opened the box to reveal a beautiful ring, simple, elegant, with a small diamond that caught the morning light. The whole cafe erupted in applause, the same patrons who'd sung happy birthday 8 months ago, now celebrating this new beginning. Timothy slipped the ring on Moon's finger and kissed her, and Starla threw her arms around both of them. The owner of the Corner Bean brought out a bottle of champagne for Timothy and Moon and hot chocolate for Starla, on the house. "To the family that started at table 7, someone shouted, and everyone raised their cups. 6 months later, they married on a warm Saturday morning in September.
The ceremony took place at the Corner Bean, at the corner table where it had all begun. The cafe owner had closed the space for the morning, transforming it with simple white flowers and strings of lights. Starla was the flower girl, wearing the green dress she'd picked out herself, and she announced anyone who would listen that she'd known they were in love for forever and ever. Lumen came and took photos, genuinely happy for them. She'd brought her new girlfriend, an art restorer she'd met at the museum, and they sat together in the front row. When it was time for vows, Timothy spoke first. "Moon, when you asked if you could share our table, you gave me more than company for coffee. You gave me hope. You taught me that families aren't just born, they're built, one kind moment at a time. You showed Starla what resilience looks like. You showed me what love should feel like. I promise to always make room at our table for you, to celebrate every birthday like it's the most important day of the year, and to remind you every single day that you are exactly where you belong." Moon's hands trembled as she held his. "Timothy, I came to this cafe on the worst birthday of my life, looking for ghosts. Instead, I found a future. You and Starla didn't just let me share your table, you made room in your hearts. You taught me that grief and joy can exist together, that broken doesn't mean worthless, and that family is what you make it. I promise to love you both with everything I have, to honor the family you've welcomed me into, and to never forget
that the best things in life start with a simple question: can I share this table? When they kissed, the small gathering erupted in cheers. Starla jumped up and down, and somewhere in the crowd, someone started singing, fittingly, "Happy Wedding Day to You," which made everyone laugh through their tears.
They cut a small chocolate cake with vanilla buttercream frosting, exactly like the one from that first birthday. Moon closed her eyes and made a wish, the same wish she'd been making for months: gratitude. As they danced their first dance in the narrow space between tables, Moon rested her head on Timothy's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for asking," Timothy whispered back. And Starla, watching her dad and her new stepmom dance, leaned against Lumen and said, "Mommy, did you know that sometimes fairy tales are real? They just don't look like the ones in books." Lumen kissed the top of her daughter's head. "You're absolutely right, sweetie. Sometimes they look like this." Their story had started with a birthday song and a slice of cake, with a young woman brave enough to ask for what she needed, and a single father kind enough to say yes, with one simple truth that changed 3 lives forever. Sometimes, all it takes is making room at your table for someone who needs a place to belong. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe so you never miss stories like this, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change absolutely everything. Thank you for sharing this table with us.